Cool. Well, hey, welcome to Final Round Impromptu for our online virtual tournament.
Oh, yeah.
All of that works. That's great with me. So I have not judged Impromptu in the online tournament space, but I think it should be pretty easy. Kate, do you want to time yourself, or would you like me to time you?
Or you guys can do hand signals. I can make one of you like my whole screen, or...
Okay, which do you prefer?
If you could do time signals, that might be better, because I forget to look at my clock sometimes.
That's fine. So I will take care of the time signals. I have my phone ready to go and set up for that, so it should be no problem.
Perfect. Okay. I will
So my understanding is I will post your prompt on the chat.
Mm-hmm.
And then do you write it down on a piece of paper, or do you just keep reading it?
I can either put it on a note card, or I've just been reading it off the chat. Either's fine with me.
Okay. Would you prefer I give you just a few seconds to write it on your paper first, just because it's unfair to count your time?
That would be super, so I don't have to like run to my camera every 2 seconds.
Yeah, that'd be better. So let me paste your prompt here real quick.
And I'll let you know when I have it written down.
Okay, your prompts are in the chat. Please choose one. And then once you're done writing it down, please look back up at the screen and let me know when you're done.
All right, go for it.
Great. So like normal impromptu, I'll give you standard hand signals, 5 minutes down, just counting from my fingers.
And then verbal?
Excuse me?
During prep, will there be verbal time?
Yes, it'll be verbal during prep. C is 30 minutes, or sorry, 30 seconds. And then when we get to 10 seconds, I'll do this, and then I'll count down from 5. So pretty standard. And whenever you're ready.
All right, let's go.
Great. And the time starts now. Thirty seconds. One minute. A minute 30.
What do you do when you are absolutely sure that you are completely wrong about everything in the world that you know about? Now, such is the story of an artist named Marina Abramovic, who set out to ask herself what art and what life really meant. She created a project called Rhythm Zero, which was an art project that asked what people would do if they were left alone in a room with multiple objects and someone who just stood there. And what she found was the complete opposite of what she assumed. Instead of everybody banding together and perhaps creating other art, the participants actually turned on each other and began hurting the main subject of the art piece. Now, this leads us to the quotation that I was given today. When you undervalue what you do, the world will undervalue who you are, by Oprah. And while this may be a valid idea of our reflections of ourself reflecting the way the rest of the world sees us, I ultimately have to disagree, because I believe that we can have value and have doubts in ourselves, but still be successful. Now, I'm going to be showing this through two key ways today. First, through the idea of Hegelian dialectics, and second, through the idea of standpoint theory. Now, let's begin with the idea of Hegelian dialectics, which tells us that the world is basically a synthesis. It tells us that black and white actually create gray, and that both ideas can exist and come together to create some kind of middle ground. So what this tells us is that we can feel differently about things than the way we are actually perceived. And so our ideas of ourselves and the ideas that others have about us are not uniquely married. Now, this can be seen in the idea of the painting behind Judith beheading Holofernes, a painting in 1599 by Michelangelo Caravaggio. Michelangelo Caravaggio was considered the sinner who painted saints, and painted this beautiful biblical piece, but in the same time was a total menace to the entire society of Rome. He's well known for this incredible biblical, holy, sacred art piece, but at the same time, historians regard him as one of the renegades of the Baroque period. Now, what this shows us is through Hegelian dialectics. Michelangelo Caravaggio may have seen himself as a wild renegade, but may have painted holy subjects, and was somehow able to do both at once. And looking back to the idea of us seeing ourselves as opposites, we see that these ideas can actually lead us to believe that our perceptions and the way we are perceived are not always the same. Now, second, let's take a look at the idea of standpoint theory, which tells us that sometimes the world is not all that it seems. Standpoint theory tells us that the most accurate view of the world comes from those who are discriminated against by society, because the way we perceive the world, either as fair or as unfair, is determined by the place that we take in that society, which shows that different people in different social classes may experience the world differently. Someone in an upper-class white neighborhood will see the world very different than someone who, say, lives in the Bronx. And those who experience discrimination actually have a more accurate view of the world because they are able to understand the ways in which the world is flawed and the world hurts them. Now, this can be seen through a Trevor Project study that showed that 39% of LGBT youth in 2018 considered or strongly considered attempting suicide. Now, what this shows us is the fact that while our perceptions of the world may be very different, the idea of standpoint theory tells us that while many of us believe that the fight for gay rights and LGBT equality has finished with the passage of the Marriage Equality Act, it is far from doing so. And our standpoint sometimes doesn't always lead us to believe the fact that these are different. Looking back to Oprah Winfrey's original idea, she talks about how sometimes our perceptions of ourselves are mirrored in the ways other people perceive us. But when we look at the difference of the standpoint between heterosexual cisgender people and the struggles that people from the LGBT community may face, we see that these are actually total different ideas. Now, today we took a look at the quotation, "When you undervalue what you do, the world will undervalue who we are." And we interpreted this to mean that how we look at ourselves is how other people will directly see us. And we disagreed with this idea because sometimes we may see ourselves differently from the world, but that doesn't mean that either view is incorrect. Now, we looked at this first through the idea of Hegelian dialectics and the fact that we can have opposites that may still create a synthesis opinion, and explored this through the idea of Michelangelo Caravaggio, the sinner who painted saints, before second, looking at this through standpoint theory and the way in which perceptions of the world differ, as with the idea of the LGBT youth that are currently suffering. Bringing this all back to our original idea, we see the fact that in Rhythm Zero, we were able to look at perceptions of art very differently.
Thank you guys, and congrats on everyone making finals.
You do.
Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much. The judges, once you're done, please just let me know.
I'm good to go. I got my notes and everything, and we'll synthesize them after the round's over.
Great, thanks, man. Okay, so Brennan is still not here, so that means our next speaker will be Carlos.
I am here. Sorry.
There we go. I see you now.
Yeah.
Are you ready, or would you prefer to wait?
I'm ready. Yeah, whenever you guys.
Okay, never mind. Okay, so then Brendan will be our next speaker. Give me a second to get your prompt up. Would you like to time yourself, or would you prefer that I do it for you?
Would it be okay if you timed me for me?
Absolutely.
Or timed me for me?
No problem. I'll give you hand signals.
Thank you.
Your prompt is now in the chat. Please write it down, and then once you're done, look back up and let me know you're ready.
All right. All right, I am ready.
All right, then let's begin. Brennan, whenever you are ready, and I'll start your time.
Okay, I'm ready.
Great, and your time starts now. Thirty seconds. One minute.
One of my favorite TV shows when I was a kid was Ed, Edd n Eddy. Now, Ed, Edd n Eddy was about three kids named Ed, who the entire goal of the show was for them to get a quarter. And they would use a variety amount of scams and schemes in order to get a quarter, so that way they could buy a gumball. However, every episode, they always ended up getting a quarter, but then realizing they always wanted more. They were greedy. They realized that a quarter was never enough in the world that they lived in. And it showed me that as a kid, that even when you accomplish your goals, there's always another goal you can be setting after you meet the one that you originally intended to. And it leads me to the quotation by Nelson Mandela today. And that's, after climbing a hill, one finds that there often are many more hills to climb. And I interpreted this to mean that struggle is eternal, and you should always keep fighting for what you believe in. And I agree with this idea. And today we'll analyze this through two main areas. First, where people found success through enjoying the struggle that they were in. And second, where they used the struggle to their advantage. First, where people enjoyed the struggle. Now, we're going to move to a lighthearted example of the video game Animal Crossing. Now, Animal Crossing is a wonderful game when you're stuck in quarantine. It's about where you're on an island with a bunch of villagers. You get to fish, catch bugs, find fossils. But the whole point of the game is that you keep moving forward, that you want to make your island and your villagers as happy as possible. The game basically as a struggle for you, the player, to improve yourself and your island. Then once you have a goal of maybe befriending a villager, there's always another goal you can move on with. And the game rewards you for keeping struggling inside of the game. And you're rewarded for it, showing the benefits of enjoying struggle and continuing to move forward. Second is the novel Cannery Row. Cannery Row, one of John Steinbeck's literary classics, follows Doc and his sidekick, who remains largely unnamed throughout the entire novel. Now, it's described in the book that Doc's assistant is arguably special needs. However, Doc gives him a job because he enjoys what he does. That this child that Doc effectively adopts because he found him enjoys the work that Doc gives him. And because of that, even though it's a struggle for him, he still enjoys doing it. And because he struggles and keeps working to get better at the menial tasks that Doc gives him, he gets joy from completing them, even though it's a struggle along the way. And it shows that if you struggle and meet your goals, even if they're small, you can receive large amounts of personal fulfillment. And now that we've discussed how enjoying the struggle is beneficial for 2 examples, we'll move on to how people use the struggle to their advantage. First is Kate Chopin, an author of the classic novel, The Awakening. Now, The Awakening discusses a woman's journey in Elizabethan Great Britain. However, it's rare for the time, as it's a story about woman's empowerment as she seeks to divorce her husband. Now, it's arguably reflective off of Kate Chopin's legacy and her real life. She decided to take her struggle of being unhappy with her marriage and her family and use it to create a critical bestseller, which arguably changed the way that we look at literary concepts from the era, as this was a large feminist work where a woman decided that in order to take control of her life, that it was best to end it, which was a revolutionary idea for the time. And Kate Chopin took her struggle and created it into a critical and literary success because she used her struggle to her advantage. And finally, we're going to look at Steven Spielberg. Now, Steven Spielberg's first main movie, American Graffiti, was a struggle for him. He viewed that he would never be successful in life. He had many failures, and many teachers along the way told him that he would amount to nothing. However, he said that he enjoyed the struggle that he was in, and he used his position to his advantage. That's because many people underwrote him or believed he was nothing, that when he achieved something impossible, all of a sudden it was more magnificent than if it was coming from a fantastic creator. By using the struggle of being underrepresented, he used it to his advantage. So when he created a script like American Graffiti, an American classic, it became a hit and allowed him to move on to his more notable works, such as Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and Jaws, because he beat the expectations because he took advantage of the struggles that he was in order to create critical and literary success, making him an icon of American movies for the last few decades. So today, we've looked at the quotation by Nelson Mandela. That's after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. And I interpreted this to mean that a struggle is eternal, and we should always keep struggling for our next goal. And I agreed with that interpretation. And we looked at it through 2 main areas, where people enjoyed the struggle and they use it to their advantage, and where people take struggle and they use it as an advantage for critical and literary success. And it brings me back to when I'm 6 years old watching the television and Ed, Edd n Eddy. Ed, Edd n Eddy throughout the entire show would always struggle to get that gumball, but never could. However, every time they got that 25 cents, they would always want more. And it told me as a kid that I should always keep struggling for my goals.
Thank you. You can be the designated clapper guy. We need that. Okay, so that means next up will be Carlos.
Yeah, I'm kind of just following the pattern of everyone else so far and copy down the quotation on a separate piece of paper. I'm kind of tradition. I'll just read it off that, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll post in the chat, choose one, copy it down on a piece of paper, and then once you're done, let me know, and we can start the time.
For sure. I'm also going to time myself just to make sure I'm on time too. So
great. So would you prefer that I not give you any time signals and just let you take care of it? Or do you want me to still go through that process?
Could you still? Like, if it wouldn't be that much of a bother?
Not at all.
just in case by some chance my phone turns off and it's like, oh, we're gonna give you a hard time today.
Hey, without a doubt. Okay, here are your prompts.
Alrighty. Oh, is it? Oh, there we go. Sorry, I thought it was the same.
There are 3 there within that in the very bottom of the chat.
Yeah. Okay. One else. All right. Ready to start.
Perfect. So your time will start now.
Cool.
Thirty seconds. One minute. A minute 30. Don't forget you're on mute.
A study by the New England Journal of Medicine confirmed what we already all knew. People with bow ties are immediately considered to be vastly superior in all things physical, intellectual, and even personal interactions. It was a great article, and it confirmed all those things in a study of 500,000 people that were divided up between bow tie wearers and non-bow tie wearers. It was pretty awesome. Boost of confidence. It was also wrong. It was a satirical article that was written by someone else who also wore bow ties, who included people in his examples, including the racist Tucker Carlson. But all of this is just to show us that sometimes our hubris can be decided by the smallest little things, like objects, material, or personal, which brings us to the quotation that we're presented with today that reads, "I've never really allowed anyone else to tell me whether I'm good or not." Kelsey, grammar. What we can interpret grammar to mean is that we cannot let anyone else tell us whether or not we are good or not. And we can analyze this and agree with this for 2 key reasons. First, through figures who decided that structures could not tell them whether they were good or not. And second, personal obstacles that could not dictate whether someone was good or not. First, structures exist whether we choose to see them or not. Those be racial structures or, as Susan Bryden discovered in her article, Men at the Heart of Mothering, structures can exist to put women down. Through looking at several different Disney movies, she analyzed that women in the movies such as Pocahontas and even Beauty and the Beast were relegated down to literal objects, being objectified throughout the movie and only used for their sagely wisdom. So in this sense, structures were what put people down and could not let them get back up again. Second, we could see this through the case of Joy Milne, someone who discovered that she had a superpower, which was being able to smell someone else's disease coming, specifically Parkinson's. She said that in a study, she was able to smell whether or not someone would develop Parkinson's even years before it was finally detected. And the study was then corroborated with other pieces of evidence that corroborated that animals could also smell cancer coming and various other diseases. But unfortunately, her knowledge was not able to be turned into actual scientific literature. And the reasoning for that was because it was too weird for the scientific community to have someone that could smell disease. So in this case, structures kept Joy Milne down. But we can also understand that sometimes the good that we do in the world can only be hampered by personal reasons and a struggle to go on the journey. We can see this through the fictional book, Salt Houses, written by Aliane Hala, who wrote that her family, on a trip from Palestine to all the various places that they visited, Israel, Italy, finally the United States, struggled many, many times with even just trying to get a visa. And in this case, the fictional reality of Salt Houses portrayed the exact struggles that the author went to just to find home. But we can also see this through the example of someone else who had to travel various different obstacles and places just to get to where she's at right now. Through the example of Petra Estrada, who had to travel across the Sonoran Desert just to be able to provide for her own family. She left behind a career in Mexico, a prospering career, to come to the United States, work her way up to where she's at, and eventually even marry and adopt the name Petra Pelayo. In that way, I'm real proud of my mom for having traveled so far just to achieve what she really wanted, a family, a home. Personal struggles or her desire to do good in the world were really what dictated the good that she actually did in the world. Various different things get in our way, especially as we struggle to even just do things and move about in the world. Everyone in quarantine can definitely understand this right now. This brings us to the quotation that we're presented with today that reads, "I'm not really allowed anyone else to tell me whether I'm good or not," by Kelsey Grammer. We can agree with this quotation because no one, obstacles, quarantine, structural reasons will tell us the kind of good that we can do in the world. We understood this through the structural examples of Joy Milne and Suzanne Bryden, and finally through the personal struggles of Salt Houses and my mom, Petra Estrada, to really teach us all that sometimes objects, structures, don't have power. And in the case of bow ties don't have power either. They don't tell us whether or not we're going to be good or not. So as an ethical obligation to show us that bow ties don't have power, you know what? Off with this. Forget it. I can decide whether or not I have power. Humility, y'all.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so this means we've got 2 speakers left. So Ryan, it means you're up next. Are you ready?
I am ready.
That's what I like to hear. Give me just a second to put your prompt on the chat.
Sure.
Will you be writing the prompt down on a piece of paper?
No, I'll just use the chat. It's cool.
Sorry, one more time. You cut out for just a second.
Oh, I'll just use the chat. It's cool.
Oh, the chat? Okay, great. So then that means I'll give you just a few seconds to read through them, choose one, and then we'll start the time.
Cool.
Okay, your prompts are in the chat. Once you have one chosen, let me know.
Gotcha. Thanks. Okay.
Great. And your time starts now. "30 seconds. 1 minute. A minute 30.
American icon James Dean is very well known for his portrayal of the very first emo in America through his character in American Graffiti. He was also known as being one of the youngest Hollywood stars to die in a horrific car accident, which is why I find it to be pretty ironic that today's quote from James Dean follows as death can't be considered because if you're afraid to die, there's no room in your life to make discoveries by none other than Jimmy Dean. Not, of course, the sausage manufacturer, but the actor. And it's particularly ironic that James Dean made this quote because he can't change anything now that he's dead. But that doesn't make his quote any less relevant, especially because James Dean's essential message is that death creates change. And I'm going to agree with this quotation. We can see that death creates change in two positive ways. First, by looking at the movie Shrek. And second, by looking at the plant Coffea eugenides. And then second, we can look at how death makes things a whole lot worse in the case of duck penises and Aung San Suu Kyi. So first, let's take a look at how death can create change for the better. Perhaps the best notable example of this is the movie Shrek. I'm sure all of us have seen it. I hope you have. If not, please watch it. But an interesting tidbit about the movie Shrek is that it wasn't originally cast with Mike Myers playing Shrek in his iconic Scottish accent. Rather, it was Chris Farley, who died just before they finished shooting the movie. They were considering scrapping it entirely, but they'd already animated the whole thing, so they might as well just get someone else to play it, even though they were really set on Chris Farley. And it's a good thing they did, because the direction that the directors went in with Mike Myers playing the Scottish Shrek actually gave him a much better direction as a character. Instead of being lazy and oafish, he was directed and had a motivation in life. Shrek became a new person when the person behind him passed away. We can also see how death can create positive change by looking at the plant Coffea eugenides. Now, let's take a look at coffee plants. So there's Coffea arabica, which is the most popular coffee plant in the world and makes the best tasting coffee that we've known so far. There's also Coffea robusta, which tastes like a rubber tire. But there's a third type of coffee that no one has yet found out, and it's called Coffea eugenides. Coffea eugenides died out a long time ago because it's small, it doesn't produce a lot of usable fruits, and it's really not great for agricultural production. But once farmers rediscovered this forgotten dead plant, they realized that it was actually incredible. The coffee it produces creates notes of sugar cereal milk and other such ridiculously sweet flavors that no one even thought was possible in coffee. It was only after reversing death that they could effectively bring back a forgotten coffee plant for years to come. But there are also many negative ways that death can create change. We can look first at the example of duck penises and then at the example of Aung San Suu Kyi. So first, duck penises. Now, I'm not sure any of you have thoroughly examined the underside of a duck, but if you would find that they have 12-inch corkscrew penises. And you might be asking yourselves, why on earth does a duck need a 12-inch corkscrew penis? Well, unfortunately for ducks and for humanity, as we found out with the Me Too movement, ducks like rape. And male ducks evolved gradually over time to get a long corkscrew penis because female ducks developed long corkscrew vaginas in order to prevent themselves from being impregnated by rapey ducks. So we can see pretty clearly that death of lesser male ducks with smaller penises actually made the ducks more capable over time of committing rape. We can also see through the example of Aung San Suu Kyi. She's currently the head of Myanmar. She made her way to the top of the power structure in Myanmar by fighting against human rights abuses. But once she got to the top, she quickly turned a blind eye to the struggles of the Rohingya people at the hand of the Myanmar army. What we can see from her rise to power is that death of other people created change for her, but not change for the people who were dying. So when we looked at today's James Dean quote, death can't be considered because if you're afraid to die, there's no room in your life to make discoveries. We find first that James Dean isn't going to be making any discoveries anytime soon, but we agree with his quotation because death can make positive change in the case of recasting Shrek or rediscovering a dead coffee plant, and death can also make negative change in the case of Aung San Suu Kyi as well as rapey ducks.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, one left. We have Josh.
Guys, hold on one second. I was getting my headphones in, and the 8x8 kept spamming like your new audio device, so I had to get to the
Everything
chat.
exploded around you. That's okay.
Is the audio good and is the connection good?
So far, yeah, you actually sound fantastic.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome. So would you like me to, or would you like to write down the quote on a piece of paper?
I would love that.
Okay. So I'm going to put it in the chat. Choose one, write it down, and then once you're done with that, let me know and we'll begin.
All right.
And here it is.
Hold on, writing it down. All right, I have it written down.
All right. Your time starts now. Thirty seconds. One minute. A minute 30.
If a tree falls in a forest and nobody's around to hear it, doesn't even make a sound. Rather, I like to take the quote from Dear Evan Hansen, which is, if you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around, do you ever really crash or even make a sound? Did that event even happen if no one was able to see it? Which is a good question we always have to ask. If no one sees anything, does it actually happen? Which leads me to the quotation I received the day. I didn't do it. Nobody saw me do it. There's no way you can prove anything, by Nancy Cartwright. Which we're going to interpret today to mean that If no one sees it, it didn't happen. And we're going to agree with this interpretation and look at it through 3 key examples. But first, we're going to look at it through Zorro from One Piece. Second, we're going to look at this through Hugh Jackson of the Cleveland Browns. And finally, we're going to look at this through youth climate action. So first, let's take a trip down to a little well-known anime called One Piece. It's a short little piece that has about 900 episodes in it. And we're going to talk about a character in it named Zorro, who, after one of the huge arcs, does something very heroic for his team. He takes in a bunch of damage that all of the team received in this big flash of violence and all its great things. But at the end of the day, when the team finally recovers from everything and comes sees him standing there covered in his own blood, they ask him and say, "What happened here?" And Zorro, through gritted teeth, without even looking at them, says, "Nothing. Nothing happened." And the anime goes on. They don't ever mention that moment again. To the rest of the crew, nothing happened in that moment. Yet, to the watchers, to the viewers, we saw what happened. We saw the heroic actions that were taken by Zorro. But for the rest of the anime, that didn't happen for that crew. They didn't get that. Thus, Zorro is proving that if you don't see what happened, nothing really did happen. If you can't view what is going on, you can't prove something did happen. Now, going away from a little bit of media, let's go into something in more real terms. Let's say a failing career. Hugh Jackson of the Cleveland Browns was probably the worst head coach ever. He had a record of 1-32 or 1-31. Yes, 1-31. He had an entire season where he didn't win a game. And he still got hired another season. And we kept hearing from the Cleveland Browns front office, "Don't worry, Hugh Jackson's actually a really good coach. The players love him. He's doing a great job." But we as the fans didn't see any of that. So the question we always brought up was, is he actually a good coach? Did he actually do anything? If we can't see the progress on the field, if we can't see the progress the team is making, is Hugh Jackson even doing anything as a coach? And Hugh Jackson proves this interpretation clearly because no one saw him do anything. No one saw him do anything for the team. And thus, we started questioning the administration of the Cleveland Browns, saying, "What is he doing? He's not doing anything." And thereby, the riots finally did get him fired, and he lost his job eventually. Thus proving, though, if no one sees you doing anything, you're not actually doing anything. Finally, going on to something a little bit more real and a little bit more ingrained in politics. We're going to talk about a newer climate organization called the Youth Climate Action. Mainly focused on Twitter, it is what's known as one of these new environmentalist groups that's popping up from the youth climate strikes and all these things. However, the Youth Climate Action is a little bit different because Youth Climate Action hasn't been seen doing anything. In fact, the only thing that they're known for currently is not endorsing Joe Biden, the Democratic nominee, the only person who's fighting for climate change in this entire presidential election. So we as environmentalists have to look at this organization and ask, what are you actually doing? What are you actually doing to help the environment of our generation? What are you doing as our generation's environment protection to do something for the environment? If we can't see what you're doing as an organization, you're not doing anything. Thus, again, proving this interpretation again and again, that if we can't see you, you're not actually doing anything. So today, I was given the quotation, "I didn't do it. Nobody saw me do it. There's no way you can prove anything," by Nancy Cartwright, which we interpreted to be that if no one sees you doing anything, probably not doing anything at all, or are you really doing anything at all? We first looked at this through the idea of Zorro and how he said nothing happened and the entire crew didn't believe anything ever happened in that moment. We then looked at Hugh Jackson, the coach of the Cleveland Browns, who after 2 seasons had nothing to show for it, which led all the fans to wonder, is he doing anything as a coach? And finally, we looked at this through the Youth Climate Action, whose goal is to help save the environment, yet no one can see them doing anything, therefore they aren't doing anything at all. I always go back to that one song in Dear Evan Hansen, if you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around, do you ever really crash or even make a sound? And I think the answer in this is no, you really don't. If no one can see you doing anything, you're probably not doing anything at all in the first place.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Congratulations, y'all. Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Congratulations on making it to finals, everyone.
Thank
Have
you.
a fantastic day, and if you have another round, best of luck to you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Bye.
See you later.